Andy, thanks for joining me for a look inside your Roman journals. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to talk to you about a couple of things. Uh, the fact that you were kind of one of the first to adapt the note to my next day self inside Rome really encouraged me, and thank you for that. And you've kicked it up a notch with delta functions, and I totally don't understand delta functions at all. So I really want to kind of just work through the problem that you're solving through journaling and then work our way into the delta functions and just the practical aspects of how you're using this as a journaling practice to help you.
Like one thing that is also worth mentioning for everybody as well anyway is like I'm a terrible journaler in many ways. I think when you sent some of those emails a few weeks ago, and in fact I would email everybody to tell them that your course was finally open, it reminded me then with what you were talking about as sort of those kind of the three sticking points where actually it was the emotional resistance one that was actually the biggest thing that I hadn't actually kind of solved. I solved the time problems because I have it ebbs and flows, but I have a reasonably good morning ritual and a morning routine which makes time for meditation and for journaling. And I've done lots of different types of journaling in the past, so you probably can't quite see them on my bookshelves behind, but I've done various paper-based systems. I tried for years doing digital ones and I just couldn't ever get it to stick. Paper-based ones worked better, so I've tried like the 5-minute journal, the daily Stoic journal, and a 6-minute diary journal, and they're all kind of good. My problem often was that I needed the prompts to start with to just kind of get me going, but when I got going, there's not enough room to keep writing. So some days I would really struggle to get anything out. And then other days I'm like, oh, well, now there's not enough room. And that's really why I wanted a digital one, because sometimes you just need to keep going and keep, and lots will flow and lots of random thoughts will come out. And that's kind of why now the Rome version is actually working for me far better. I mean, I'm still inconsistent, or at least more inconsistent than I would actually like to be. But what I've got is a combination of things that you've got, and I'll show you my Rome in a minute, but I have like a section where ultimately it's kind of free form. So, I mean, I can write as much as I want, or I can pull in prompts. So that's actually what I will do. I kind of mix and match according to how I feel, which isn't very structured, but I think that kind of also, it's helpful. Going back to the bit, it's like the emotional resistance one is one where I wasn't really being honest with myself most of the time. I think I was self-censoring, even though no one else is going to read these entries. It's just for me. But once I kind of realized that that was the third lock that I needed to unlock,
Mm-hmm.
then I kind of gave myself permission to do it. I think that was the key
That
thing
is
with it.
so interesting that you say that. It's about breaking through and being honest with ourselves. And you're fascinated by Stoicism, right? And so that's pretty interesting that here you are learning everything you can about Stoic philosophy and living your life according to Stoic philosophy, and still there's that resistance to just do the Marcus Aurelius thing and tell yourself the truth about you. That's really interesting, Andy.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, I think, for a lot of people. When you're, and especially when you're just kind of not used to it, it's really easy to just gloss over things every day. And it was only really through the Stoic practice that I kind of realized what the power of journaling could hold. So from that kind of morning, kind of just for me, brain dumping everything, and then in the evening having that sort of evening reflection.
So, do Do you generally have an idea for how much time you spend in the mornings versus the afternoons on your journal? Does it vary?
What I do, it does vary, and time kind of is the key thing. I try and kind of give myself 10 to 15 minutes. It's one of those sort of, I wouldn't say I thrive on deadlines, but having a deadline helps. Otherwise, I can just sit there and look at a blank screen for 10 minutes. But I think that's the self-censorship that is usually kicking in. It's like there's always lots of thoughts going around one way or the other. I think I got too scared to even put them down on either paper or on the screen. And that was that thing I needed to kind of get over and just start writing. What I've actually finally now found, this is kind of pretty recent. I've had an iPad for a couple of years, which is the Pro one with the pencil. And I bought it originally because I've definitely found journaling with a pen and paper easier. For some reason, it's easier than typing. There is a definite difference between the two, depending on what you're maybe journaling about. But certainly for like the morning type practice, paper and pen is definitely better for me. With the iPad, I bought a paper-like screen protector thing, which actually now makes it feel much more like paper. So, and with the very latest updates to iOS, it has like a scribble mode. And that now is how I prefer to journal, straight into Roam with my iPad and a pencil. So I am handwriting it, but it's converting it, and it's surprisingly good. I don't have to kind of go back and rewrite things a million times and stuff like that. So from my morning I call it my morning pages. You'll see when I show you in a minute, but I don't really do morning pages as such. But that section, I try and use I can go and sit down. I'm not on the computer instantly. I can kind of meditate and then do my journaling practice and then start my day from there. Once I kind of get into the afternoon, I have kind of the three sections. I have my morning pages for the morning practice, and then I have what I call my workday/evening reflection, which is the thing that I'm kind of most poor at. I'm really bad at stopping working. That's the one thing I'm trying to improve for myself at the moment.
So that's a bit of a shutdown ritual?
Yeah, so in theory it's a shutdown ritual. That's the bit I just kind of don't do often enough.
Okay, so number 3 is...
And so what I kind of mix workday/evening reflection, because it kind of depends where I do it. I had them as separate sections. I theoretically was going to do a workday sort of reflection, how had the actual workday gone, and then I would have an evening reflection. I kind of mix and match those together, because then obviously now I also have my note to my next day self, which is actually my final piece of the day, which is that's really now my evening reflection piece. That's the bit that I write very last thing. And again, I can now do that on my iPad as well, so I can try and be off the computer earlier than I would have been otherwise.
Yeah, that's always a big plus for me. So before you actually show us and walk us through it, I'm really interested in what kind of mindset or behavioral differences you're noticing now that you're spending a little bit more time in your journal intentionally.
I think intentional is the word, because what I notice now is that I am a bit more thoughtful in terms of what I actually say. I mean, I kind of have done various gratitude practices and things like that, and I do a lot of mindful type meditation. So generally, it's all of those elements, they just kind of come together where I don't get hugely stressed, at least most of the time. And it's now giving me more of a place to go if things haven't gone as well as I would have liked on any given day, or if I've shouted or got angry or something like that, then the journaling place, I now kind of know in my head that I can kind of go there and kind of let it out, but in a sort of a positive manner, in terms of from the Stoic perspective, at least, of like, it's that weighing yourself against your own standards, and just knowing that you didn't necessarily live up to the standard that you wanted to achieve. But you can kind of, there's a level of judgment, but then you can also like let it
leave
go.
it right there in the pages.
That's it. Yeah, leave it there, and then you can sort of start again and have another go the next day, which is where I really like the note to my next day self, because that's how I tend to use that as it kind of lends itself nicely to that sort of format for me, at least.
So the trade-off between, oh my gosh, now I've got to get honest with myself this morning, is totally worth it in the afternoon, even if that honesty is, oh man, because now maybe your relationships are better, your behaviors are better, and maybe there's putting words into your mouth, which is always dangerous. Maybe that means at the end of the day, there are fewer instances where you have to wear the fact that maybe you didn't behave well. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say so. There is definitely a lot more now. Well, so I'm nowhere near perfect, but there's many times where I will like it's easier to take a breath before you. For me, I'm not a super angry person, but you can get me riled up quickly.
Oh, let's try that.
But now I think with doing more journaling and being able to be honest, and it enables you to just spot it a little bit easier. You kind of know that your mind's about to go there, and because you've done that thought and you've kind of done that weighing of yourself, and you kind of know that you're going to have to be honest with yourself later, it's kind of just that little moment of pause that you can go, hang on a second, and take a breath, and maybe not explode quite as much, because I probably still will explode sometimes.
Yeah, I kind of have a way of doing that as well. Well, as we would say in Arkansas at a card table, show me what you got. I think you should be able to share your screen here. I'm really interested to see how you've kind of souped up the note to your next day self and how that's working for you.
So this is my live normal roam, so hopefully I'm not going to accidentally show some stuff that I probably don't want to show.
This is a high wire act, right?
Yeah, it always really is a little bit scary when you're sharing stuff like this. But this is my actual page for today. So you can kind of see the couple of the delta buttons there, which are just you'll see how this works in a minute, because I don't actually use the buttons as they are. For the two that you can see there, the public one and then the NTNDS. So those are the ones for this morning. I'll show you. So the public one, this is the discipline that if you're following me on Twitter, you'll see me reference quite a lot. So
yeah, you're theming your days, right?
Yeah, it's an idea for theming your days with the available time that you have left. So you do everything you need to do with the people you need to do with, and everything else. And then any time that you've kind of got to yourself, you don't have to think, oh, what shall I do? Shall I read a book, or shall I do this, or shall I watch TV? You already know. So this is one of the reasons why I like the delta function in Roam, because this is what I've set up so that I know when I come and open my Roam on this page today, it reminds me that it's a study day. And so I kind of write a separate little paragraph here, which is what I'm then tending to tweet out as another way of like, this is me setting my intention out. This is what I intend to do with my available time today.
Oh, so this is a bit of an accountability journal as well by reading that. And I love this.
Yeah. So I kind of get double duty out of it for that, as a way of just being more intentional. And then obviously then I have my NTNDS, that is my note that I wrote last night, ready and waiting for me here. So I'll demonstrate that with today's, and we can then go and have a look at what that would look like on tomorrow's page. So my morning page is here, and then my workday evening reflection, they're the other two sections. So this morning page is here. I'll quickly walk you through like my general, how I actually would do this kind of thing. So I've cleared this out in preparation. I use the word count so that basically if I do just want to kind of free form write, then I'll just write and see. And I just use the word count just to kind of see what I've been writing. But if I'm sitting here and nothing's coming out, then I have a huge collection of journal prompts that I've kind of collected over the last several years, because I found that, like we talked about, this the time and then the discipline thing, the discipline one for me was like, I don't know what to write. And it hadn't occurred to me that it was this emotional resistance thing for such a long time. So I thought, well, I just need prompts to prompt me. When I had the paper journals with prompts in, it felt easier to just start answering a question. So what I have, so I have a page called journaling prompts. If we go and have a look at that, I have a whole load of categories and sections and things. I guess we can put a link. I've got a link on my website to these. This was all from a post on my website. And then I think after Brandon had started to talk about his atomic journaling, because this is effectively the same kind of thing. What I did was then just turned all of this into the Rome version, and that's available, so people can just go and download the JSON for Rome. So if you want these questions, you can get your own copy and start using them straight away.
Yeah, these are terrific.
So what I actually do, if I go back to my daily note page, if I'm I don't know what I want to say or nothing's coming out, then what I have done, I use the block references, and then on the prompts you might have seen, so I can do one of two things. That huge list of journaling prompts there, if I start looking for block references, I use this, I've kind of prefixed it with JC : so that I can just type that, and that kind of gives me them here as those headings. So let's say I want to do some kind of gratitude and reflection type stuff. That's what I feel like doing. I'll choose that so it brings it in, and then now what I'll do is just apply the children as references, which will pull all of them in. So like I have loads of them.
Wow, you do.
And then I'll come onto this one in a minute. But if let's say like maybe there is some resistance that I'm feeling, I'll just look for a question that I feel is either right or something that I should maybe try and answer. I'll just pull that out into here, and then I'll just delete the rest of them. So it just leaves me that question. It just gives me a quick, easy way to go and have a look and pick a question.
So you are pulling that in as a reference and not a text.
Yeah, so you can see it's a block reference. And then I'll just answer that underneath. And then obviously I can go back to this on the original page where these are on that journaling prompts page. And obviously I'll get all of those backlinks there. So I can kind of see, the handy thing having all of those things on one page is you can kind of look down at all of the numbers of references and see how many times you've answered each one of them. So you can begin to see the clusters of like, oh, well, for some reason I keep heading to this section. And that is kind of what actually got me to realize that the emotional resistance was probably the thing, because you can kind of start to see I keep answering this question all of the time, which is me avoiding answering the more emotional oriented ones.
So you did a self-diagnostic based on prompts that you weren't using.
Yeah. Huh. I don't think I ever thought about it in that way, but that's kind of what I realized I'd been doing.
Like, where's the tension between a little bit of discomfort versus absolutely, look, I'm tired of answering these hard questions, so I'm just going to stop journaling? Where's the healthy line there?
That's a good question. I don't know if I know where that line is. I think for me, certainly, I know I need to kind of push into the emotional line more, because I would like see the line of emotion and stop just before it rather than get closer to it, and until I kind of realized that that's actually what I was doing, because I don't think I even realized I was doing it. I kind of put it down to laziness, and I thought, it's too hard to answer, I just won't. But really it was that digging in and realizing there was actually a deeper.
And then there are maybe days when you realize, this is my first pandemic and maybe I just need to answer an easy question today.
Yeah, I think definitely sometimes.
But it can't be a habit. Is that kind of
I think, yeah, you've got to kind of pay it. I think, and that's the part of journaling that I hadn't really thought about too much before I'd start doing it. Is like, it's finding the right habit, but it's allowing for ebb and flow. Your moods and things will change over time, and with things like the pandemic, you definitely have to give yourself a bit more grace one way or the other. and you just don't need to beat yourself up over it. You just need to recognize that you are drifting a little bit. And I think the other side of it as well is I definitely thought for a long while that I couldn't journal, or I was no good at journaling because I wasn't doing it every day. Sometimes that was definitely me just making excuses for myself. But there's also, you don't necessarily have to do it every day. I think there was an assumption that I certainly had that to do it properly and to do it right, you have to do it twice a day, every day. And there's definitely something to be said for consistency. But if it gets too overwhelming, then you're going to stop and you're never going to do anything. So you've lost everything in that sense. So, you shouldn't feel.
If you're journaling 3 days out of every 7 on a regular basis, that's still consistent, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It took me far too long to realize that was fine and okay. So it's a useful thing to make sure everybody else realizes that is okay too.
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen you employ your massive library of prompts. And I love how you put together these morning pages. Like for me, I get so emotionally attached to 2 or 3 morning page prompts that it seems so very sad when I need to park a couple because for the next 3 weeks, I only have time to do 1. And this means that I'm not as emotionally attached to the same questions every day.
Yeah, it's a fine line. I'm never quite sure myself whether just having the same few things, and I kind of do have that here so I also I've got JC, which gives me the big sections of the whole massive set of things.
What does JC stand for?
Just journaling collection.
Okay.
It was just so that I've got easy ones to remember and kind of build that muscle memory. So I also have an MP one. So that's my morning pages one. So if I do the same just off this smaller collection, I have, these are the ones that I will then tend to pick from for the morning ones, as opposed to necessarily going for the whole mega collection stuff. These are ones where I've kind of picked up and I've added to over a period of time. I picked up a few recently from Dickie Bush and his newsletter. He'd got 10 interesting questions. So it's one of my little things that's like, I love collecting questions. I've realized it's a huge superpower to just be able to learn to ask questions of everything.
How many times have we read that the important thing is not answering questions, it's knowing the right questions to ask? And if you already have a set of questions, now we're on to the answers. It's almost like Jeopardy for life.
Yeah, it just makes it a whole lot easier. It just gets you past one level of resistance. You can get away from that kind of, oh, well, I'm not sure. And you just kind of go around in circles and don't actually do anything. You're just avoiding answering things. This kind of takes that away and say, well, there's plenty of questions. You only need to pick one.
I like it.
So yeah, that's my morning section. And then I would do something here in the evening one. So I'll just clear that out a second. So in here, I have a DR one, which is the daily reflection, which is that subset there. So this is just doing that nice simple one, and I added this really visualize it bit after the journaling summit because of what Ramses said. It's like that was my key takeaway from the summit, was actually I answer this every week in a weekly review as well anyway, but it was that really visualize it that actually like, I don't actually do that, and that's a really important helpful thing to do. So now I really try and actually visualize whatever I might write in there. It's like, how will it actually be different tomorrow? What kind of, I sort of see myself going through the steps of what I say I'm going to do. And then I think that's how I'm starting to build up that ability to notice if I'm about to blow up. It's that you kind of you're training yourself. And that is one of those sort of stoic ends.
Do you ever visualize that tomorrow is going to be a bad day and this is going to be a difficult conversation and here's how I'm going to respond to it?
I do. Like if I know I have to have a difficult conversation, it's another stoic practice, which I happened to do years ago when I was younger, and I never knew that it was that. I used to do it because I used to do rock climbing when I was younger to kind of get over the sweaty hands that would come when you start to think about it. You get sweaty. Then, as bizarre as it sounds, you kind of start to visualize the worst thing happening. It's a learned practice, and it will kind of calm you down, and you'll just have less sweaty hands. So that negative visualization, as I always
Andy,
kind of knew it as, it turns out it was an ancient Stoic practice as well.
my hands are sweaty just thinking about you. Your hands sweating on a rock climb.
Yeah, well, they do now. And there's a program that I watched, and I was watching the guy free climb El Capitan, no ropes or anything, and my hands were actually sweating when we were watching that one.
Wow.
So I'm nowhere near that brave. But so yeah, this is my kind of core set for the evening reflection. But obviously, again, I can go back to my huge JC collection and pick out something different if I'm not feeling this for whatever reason. Like you say, sometimes if it's the end of the day and you're tired, I will do something because I want to build that sort of muscle of consistency, but I don't want to beat myself up because I can't be bothered.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, when we have decision fatigue, sometimes it's better for that decision to be made for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, as someone was saying the other day, like you've only got so many spoons to use on a given day. So again, you've just got to give yourself some grace, I think.
I like it. Yes. And I think journaling helps us build that grace muscle, because if we can be gentle with ourselves over our journaling habits, now then we've got that muscle that helps us give ourselves grace when we blow up at somebody.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So then we come to the NTNDS section, which is the bit that we wanted to talk about mostly here, and how I use the delta function with it. So it is ridiculously simple. I would, at the end of the day, just put in my something like, what are we on today, Wednesday?
And isn't that important to start that note on something, positive and affirming?
It's one of those weird things, and maybe it's a British thing as well. It's like when you kind of first posited that, my immediate gut reaction was like, well, that's pointless. There's no need for that. But I gave it a try anyway, and like gave it a week or so, and actually it does make a difference. But if I did try a few, but not doing that and just putting here's some intentions for tomorrow, it's a totally different feel. It's surprisingly important, I think, to do that. And then the other bit that I don't think I'm good enough yet, but obviously I would then write whatever I'm going to write to myself tomorrow. I don't necessarily finish off, well, I'll just maybe from Wednesday, and that doesn't feel quite right. And so now I do put things more like a bit more warmly, maybe not warmly enough most of the time, but
who's going to judge that?
But well, that's the thing. That's what I've realized in doing this is what's helping me kind of unlock some of the emotion that I've been kind of holding back on. It's just been these surprisingly simple little words that you just become more comfortable with, and then it feels weird to not have that. But it just does open you up somehow. It's difficult to explain, but it does work.
There are days when I surprise myself at the end of the day by writing the word love Wednesday, Tracy. And I'm like, dudette, where'd that come from? And it helps. But it also feels like this is the silliest thing on the planet. But you're right, it works.
Yeah. I think that's what I need to do for myself more definitely. It's kind of like, it's that self-love really. And if I can't even write it down to just me, then that's probably telling me something that I need to learn from.
I struggle with that too. And I've been doing this, 3 years?
Yeah, I think there's nothing about this that's fast, and I don't think you should expect it to be fast. There are just small subtle changes that happen that allow you to become more aware of things which just change you. Sometimes they'll change you really fast. There'll be a sudden realization, but most of the time I think it's just this small, gentle change, and you just notice that your nature is changed for the better, hopefully, and it's just a helpful practice. So ultimately, I mean, I'll just write it like this, and then this is where it's so ridiculously simple, is that I just make sure that I'm on the parent NTNDS block. Now, it won't be great to see on there, but I'm pressing, so I'm on a Mac. All I do is hold Option, Shift, and press Enter. If you're on a Windows keyboard, it's just Alt instead of Option. But all I'm doing is I'm just pressing the keyboard shortcut of Alt and Shift and Enter, and that does the magic delta stuff. And it's gone from today's page now. It's just replaced it with this little star. That will show you where it's gone to. So if I click this, you can actually see it's on October the 15th, and it's there and waiting. So if I actually go to, we've got to go back to the actual daily notes page. If we go to the calendar and go to tomorrow's entry, then you'll see there's my public section ready and waiting for tomorrow, which is a play day. And you can see that NTNDS is sitting here. So as soon as I come to this page in the morning, this is exactly what I will see. And it's just sitting there. And it's grey because we're looking at it today on the 14th of October. In the morning, that will be the darker grey where I could click it. But I don't click any of these. I'm just simply using it to send it to it's a nice simple case of I'm just sending it to tomorrow. That's all I'm interested in, is I'm writing it today and I'm sending this for my tomorrow self. It literally is, I am sending it to my next day self. But it means it shows up here rather than having to show up down here in the link references, because I do like to actually revisit this throughout the day. It gives me something to sort of recenter myself on. But what I will find, so obviously this is how my page starts out in the morning, and then I have a text expander snippet of DN which will populate all of my sections for me, so I can then start filling it out. And obviously as I fill out things in this work log section, that's usually where I spend a lot of my time in the day, of just adding all the random thoughts and work notes and other bits and pieces. The page gets hugely long, so it's far easier to scroll up to the top to find the section than it is to kind of maybe start collapsing things down and trying to get down into the linked references to find stuff. So that's why for me, the delta function just makes it so easy, and I don't have to think about trying to find which date tomorrow and stuff for it.
So your delta function orders are based on which delta functions you activated first. So that's a sequential thing, right?
Yeah. So in terms of what has shown up on this page, this shows up first because I set up my decade. I set it up at the beginning, and then it's a 10-day period. So this has been sitting here for I'm not sure which day it started. It's probably been about a week. Okay. This will be day 7, I think, of this particular decade. So that's been sitting on this page for a week already anyway. And then I set this one up yesterday, and that's pushed it to ready for tomorrow. And obviously then I've just pushed this one here now ready. So they just stack up. So as you get more and more things pushing in, I mean, over time it's going to get messier. But the other thing is they are just blocks like anything else. So for example, the heart check, I'll probably just drag that into daily practices. So you can move it around. It's just that they start there and they're just on the page ready to go. It's a little bit like if you've got an old-fashioned kind of paper planner with your dates, and you've just kind of gone forward to a future date and written in, like, I've got an appointment on this date. We're kind of just doing the same thing really with the delta function in this vein.
As usual, I've been overcomplicating the delta function then.
Yeah, I mean, because you can do other stuff with it. But if you're just doing it in this nice, simple, for note to my next day self, that's the simplest use case that you can have with it, which is just simply having it and sending it to the following day. I'll show you, because there's two different ways you can do it. I'll just undo. So we're back to today as if I've just written it. You can actually, so you don't need to know the keyboard shortcut for it. There is this like weird delta looking thing if you right click on the block. This is the one that you want, because this is the shortcut that I use, the option with the shift and the enter. What that is saying is what we're sending this block itself, and we're sending all the children. So you can just send the parent block. I'll show you this just so you know what not to do, because this is where it does confuse people with it, is that if I were to just choose this delta, this is because we've already done this before, I'm getting this message, but I'll just do a test thing like this just so that it's completely separate.
Yeah, I see the difference. I didn't realize there was a difference.
So the difference is, if you just use this one, what you're doing is pushing this specific block into the future. It basically gets rid of the child blocks, whereas if you use,
it separates a mother from a child, and I'm not a fan of that.
I like that. I like that way of putting it. But if you use this child menu option, that's probably the way to remember it. Is if you use the child menu, the child option, it will take all of the children along with it. So if I wanted to send that to tomorrow, you can do that. That's exactly the same thing. So if we now go to tomorrow, you can see we've moved it.
Yeah. Okay.
All over there.
And
this is why you can see now I've got multiple ones on there. That's why that message was coming up. So it does warn you when you've done something weird. So you can notice that.
And just for the record, one of the things I love most about you and Rome community is that I get to just admit my ignorance on the delta function. I've read a lot about it, and I never could see the difference. And it's okay, because you're here to teach me, and thank you for that, Andy.
You taught me NTNDS, and that has had a huge impact on my life. So
I love our community. So I've taken up way too much of your time here. So will you please come back and let's do another video about the heart check that you put together for me. The heart check, I see it there on your daily pages. This is a practice that I've been doing on paper that helps people manage anxiety. It helped me a ton. And again, the delta function has been confusing to me, and it might have just solved part of it, but you've also got it set up so that it's in a table. So if you would please come back and talk to me about that, and we'll do a completely separate video demo on that. If that's all right with you, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
Before I let you go here, I want to make sure that I leave anybody watching with one quick thing that they can take away to help solve the problem that you didn't even realize you had, which is just owning your feelings and leaning into that. So what's one thing somebody can do to just embrace that and face the discomfort and just improve their day and their life and their future?
I think, as simple as it probably sounds, because it sounds too simple to me, it is as simple as that. You just have to give yourself permission to do it. I think you can kind of rationalize lots of things, and it's that no one else is going to read this, no one else ever has to see it, but you just have to admit that for yourself in the first place. And it's kind of as simple as that. That was the thing that hit me the most, is that I'm actually holding myself back. I'm self-censoring, and I don't need to. And I give myself permission to no longer need to self-censor and just dump it. It doesn't have to even make sense on the page. It's one of the other handy things of Rome thinking and thinking in blocks, is that don't worry, you don't even have to worry about writing sentences and stuff if you feel that you have to. Rome teaches you to write in blocks. It has changed my thinking in general terms to think differently and thinking at the block level and having more discrete ideas. So that actually is the other thing that kind of frees you up a little bit as well. You can just, single words in blocks is fine. You don't have to overthink anything. And over time, you'll be able to use that then to find patterns you didn't know were there. But if you're just getting started, don't even worry about that at this point. That's just treasure to find later.
Thanks, Andy. I want to make sure that I include a link to your beautiful library of prompts, but also maybe not everybody has been through your free email course. What's the best way for somebody to get their hands on that, especially if they're new to Rome? Gosh, even if you're not new to Rome, there's still a ton of stuff in there.
Well, you can get straight onto the sign up page. The easiest place is probably to go to my website, which is just elaptics.co.uk, elaptics.co.uk. There's a nice red button up in the top left corner that will take you to the landing page, and you can just stick your email address in and get the first lesson straight away. And then you can read all about the various different parts of Rome and just start using it bit by bit. Don't get overwhelmed.
Don't get overwhelmed. Yeah. Thank you, Andy, so much. I'm going to let you get on with your evening. I appreciate your time.
You're more than welcome. It's a fun conversation.
Yeah.